I will,
Okay, Aurora, are we live and everyone is online? Yes, okay. Then we will get started. Welcome to the November 12th meeting of the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board. We will begin with roll call, Bonnie.
Chair Miriam Pintar,
Present.
Vice Chair Nadia Ayub,
Present.
Secretary Bonnie Kink is here. Dr. Brown. Adele Fasano,
Here.
Andrew Hayes. Ariana Federico Mondragon. Tim Ware, G.I. Wilson.
here.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, 6. I didn't count myself. We have a quorum.
I don't believe we have any statements for just cause or consideration of remote participation. I didn't see Dr. Brown online. Okay, then we'll move on. We'll begin with public comments. How many have submitted requests to speak, Aurora?
We have 5 online and 3 in person.
3 in person?
Mhm.
Okay, then we will move forward with 3 minutes. And who is our first speaker, Aurora?
Cindy Whittle.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Paloma Serna. I'm speaking for Sunday. Sunday is on Zoom, but she lost her voice. So I will be speaking on behalf of her. She's Sunday Wedo, the mother of Saxon Rodriguez, who died at the Central Jail. So her statement is, I represent North County Equity and Justice Coalition and Saving Lives in Custody, California. I'm the mother of Saxon Rodriguez, who died in Central Jail of a drug overdose. Central Jail continues to have the highest number of drugs overdoses, suspected overdoses, and Narcan deploys. I am asking CLERB to audit the drug overdose information provided by the sheriff to the public to ensure the newly implemented drug scans are being followed by all staff and that staff are also being scanned as reported. While it appeared that the drug overdoses are down, I don't believe any of that to be accurate, factual, or correct. At last month's CLERB meeting, Kelly Martinez detailed how people are purposely getting arrested to sell drugs in her jails to make a bigger profit than on the street. 200 per pill in her jails. I'll say it again. This is how I know that someone working on the 4th floor on July 20th, 2021, knows where the drugs came from that killed my son Saxon. Sheriffs knows who's bringing them in and who is selling and buying and who is profiting it. It's time for CLERB to be more proactive and use your authority to investigate the inside drug operation. Let's expose the drug dealers and save some more lives. Rest in peace, Saxon Rodriguez.
Next, we have Paloma Serna.
Oops, sorry. So my name is Paloma Serna. I'm the mother of Elisa Serna, who was killed in Las Colinas Detention Center on November 11th, 2019 by William Gore, Deputy Rashawn Foster, Deputy Lucas Lacey Lovisa, Deputy Tony Hall Bennett, and medical nurse Dana Lee Pasquale, Dr. Carol Gilmore, and Dr. Frederic Valente, and many more. And I am with the North County Equity and Justice Coalition and the Saving Lives in Custody, California. Kelly Martinez's true color is coming out. We always knew her employees reflected their boss. Kelly needs to be forced to comply with the 70, not 68, but the 70 recommendation that St. Julian Michael has recommended. CLERB does have the subpoena power to force the sheriff department and Kelly Martinez to investigate, to interview her employees. You guys do have that power. This board has been established since 1991, and this is 2024. Use your power, please. And also, too, Kelly needs to comply with what CLERB is asking. We need every evidence, every information, documents, video evidence, emails, everything. So you guys could be able to do your work to see what statistics of in custody deaths, not just what she is stating, but let's see what the document shows. And also too, I ask that you guys please oversee the medical staff, and the contract, if they're contracted or not. These individual needs to be held accountable for their wrongdoings. People are dying because this medical staff that are employed by the county are unprofessional, lazy, uncompassionate, and they are murderers. So please help us. I know we got 7 deaths. I don't know. I'm hearing rumor there's an 8th one. So please help us and oversee them, and let's force them to do what is right. Thank you.
Next we have Elka Weston.
Hello, thank you very much for having me here today. I just wish it was under different circumstances. She's right. There's a problem. If you guys have all the power, I actually know that we need the support of the county. We need to start speaking up at the county appointments as well. But we need to stop having people treated for drug addiction and mental health in our jails. They need to be treated properly in hospitals. It killed this poor woman's daughter. It is murder. We need care by doctors, and we need the proper medication before they go into the jails. I mean, that's just a fact. They don't have the knowledge or the information or the specialists. We need to come forward and find the money to build a hospital that is nowhere near under the watch of Kelly Martinez. In addition, we have had a few more violent incidences. All I have to do is
raise his hands to demonstrate he also had no weapon. When Evans took a seat on the retaining wall, instead of complying with police commands, officers warned he would be shot. Police fired a beanbag shotgun round at Evans' head.
there was no reason for that to happen. That happened in Encanto. What is wrong when somebody, hands up in the air, barely any clothes on, backs up and sits, and they shoot? Thank God it wasn't a gun. That is one life that we don't have to mourn right now. And then recently at the jail, where we had deputies as well as prisoners, people that are inmates that are doing their time to rehabilitate, that's not okay. Now, I will be repeating this at the county. I always do. And I hope that we can maybe put it together where we request that these people that need help from drug addiction and mental health first are seen and put on medication properly in the hospitals. Thank you.
Next we have Darwin Fishman.
Good evening. Darwin Fishman, the His Racial Justice Coalition, San Diego. Thank you, CLERB, for your work. I was pleased to see that you guys are pushing ahead with the audit for in custody deaths and trying to dig in deeper to see what's really taking place. Of course, it was really sad and frustrating to see that your work is being blocked. So you're not getting access to the documents you need. And I also hope that with the new EO coming in and you have new members joining CLERB, that this will also help with working with the sheriff's department and that they will provide the information you need. On a basic level, for the in custody deaths, if they don't have something to hide and they're willing to change and improve, they should be willing to provide the documents and not block it. I hope that in Sheriff Martina is finally coming to a CLERB meeting after stonewalling you guys for since she was elected, that you continue to press her to have the type of meetings we come into CLERB, public as well as private, and that you also continue to apply pressure points, whether it's press conferences, going to the Board of Supervisors, and or also community town halls. It's the only way that's going to be effective, given if the sheriff department refuses to work with you. So I want to thank you for the work and understand, appreciate the pressure you're under and taking these lives seriously. The families that obviously are continuing to come here and give you their personal testimony. And the best way to assure that and to show that you're taking it seriously is to continue the work that you've been doing and to also expand it and to take our suggestions from the community seriously. You have a lot of great ones that have already been put out there, suggested by community members, impacted family. And I hope you take those to heart and include that in your work going forward. We're an asset, we're a partner in this work. You're not doing this by yourselves. So I just wanted to share that and looking forward to seeing what you guys, what your next steps are, what you're gonna do, and how we can continue to support your work. Because at the end of the day, if we can have less in custody deaths, better care in the jails, and people that should not be there, not going there, then it's a win-win for everyone. And the sheriff's department should sign up and be a equal partner in this work, not find ways, given their status and their place, to avoid responsibility and not take account for their role in this. Thank you for your work.
Next, we have David Settles.
Yes, hello, CLERB. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm the brother of Matthew Settles, who passed away in George Bailey in August of 2022. I've been here a number of times, just, here to represent my brother who had schizophrenia and, my whole family, my kids, my wife's here, my mom. We all loved Matthew, he was part of our family. He would call me every other weekend before he was in the county mental hospital, always asking me to go pick him up. Once again, Matthew's story, he was getting help in the county mental hospital. He went to jail. We all feared the worst for him, and it did happen. And we really never got, don't know at all what happened to him. So I'm here representing him, trying to prevent this happening to other families. And so I'm here, thank you, CLERB, for what you're doing. I just want to encourage, the oversight for the mentally ill, or whether it's, drug problems, the oversight of what's happening in the jails, the transparency, the medical staff. These are all important for our community. I think, people going to jail should not have a death sentence. So, I appreciate, I was here when Kelly Martinez spoke and, the initiative she's talking about. I just think, we need the transparency and the follow-up, that there are, changes happening that are preventing deaths. So thank you for letting me speak, and thank you for all you're doing, CLERB.
Next, we have Yusuf Miller.
Hello, Yusef Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition in Saving Lives in Custody, California. I want to thank you, Claire, for the work you're doing, and I wanted you to continue to thoroughly investigate these 7 or 8 deaths, whichever one it is. Whichever number it is, we're still in the top 3 of the highest in custody deaths in the state. And we don't want to go back and repeat that number of being number 1 of 2022. But at the same time, number 3 is not what we're looking for. We want to look for 0 avoidable, preventable deaths in our county jails. We also would like to see you continue to demand transparency. The data that you request from the sheriff's department out of the organization and the entity that you hired to do this investigation would be so much farther along if the sheriff department would cooperate and give those statistics and that data that needs to be, so that we can see what's actually going on. Transparency is not the enemy. Transparency is what helps us root out the problem and fix it. So this blocking of the information coming out of the sheriff's department is unnecessary and counterproductive. We also want the scanning of all the jails in the staff facility to be simultaneously for illicit drugs, not one randomly, because we feel that that's just a window dressing and not something that actually works. Now, we've heard over and over that that there's no money to get the amount of dogs that they need to sniff for looking for drugs and the time it takes. We don't really want to hear those excuses. We want for CLERB to push for access and availability to make sure that this work gets done. And however that takes, however long it takes, we're going to stand by you and demand that with you. Also, on the note of the reports of drugs in the jails and how they've sharply dropped. If you're not counting Narcan deploys, then of course the numbers are going to be falsely dropped, in our opinion. So we think that there needs to be a real audit, like was asked by Sunday Weddle, the mother of Saxon Rodriguez, that those Narcan deploys that were stopped appearing on the report should be added again. How many times do you deploy Narcan, not simply how many people who have overdosed? So we think that there's some possibly fudging of the numbers, and we would like for you to please look into that, intentionally or unintentionally. And regardless of the outcome, we want to know how many times have they used and supported the use of Narcan. And as always, we thank you for speaking up for the community and supporting the community. And you know that you're not in this by yourself. We will continue to come here. We will continue to support you as we've been doing since 2020. And we will be here far into the future. So one team, one fight. Let's get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have another speaker lined up?
Next, we have Denise Settles.
Hi, I'm Denise Settles, wife of David Settles. My mother-in-law, Brenda Settles, is also here. And I'm here to talk about my brother-in-law, Matthew Settles. Honestly, I never in a million years could have imagined myself speaking in front of a group of people dealing with law enforcement issues. I have zero background in law and law enforcement. I've never had family members that have been in the system, so to speak. So this is really alien, I think, to all of us. And I want to thank the CLERB for being here and being advocates for us, because as family members, we're out of our depth. We don't really know how to navigate the system. We don't know, in some cases, why our family members are even in the penal system. My brother-in-law, Matthew Settles, was very seriously mentally ill. He was a ward of the state. He had been in and out of mental institutions from the time that he was a very young man. He started showing symptoms in college, and he was even in the state mental hospital for years. He was in the mental hospital here in San Diego County when he was arrested. He was arrested for hitting somebody because he was not stabilized on his medication. To me, that shows that the mental health facility did not adequately care for him, and it was responsibility of the state to take care of him. And if that facility was not capable of controlling his behavior like they had in the state hospital, well, then they should have transferred him. There was no room. There was no room in the state hospital. So what's their alternative? They send him to jail. Jail should not be a de facto mental health facility. I have a real fundamental disdain for a system that treats such a fragile and vulnerable population in such a disdainful way. I realize our system is broken, and it extends to both the mental health system, our jail system, and the drug treatment system. But if the jails are going to act as a de facto mental health facility, they need to have the proper training and the proper staff to deal with that population. People like my brother-in-law should not have been killed in custody. I want to thank you so much, CLERB, for the work that you do and for being our advocate.
Next, we have Leslie Crawford.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'm North County Equity and Justice. I'm speaking for my son, Raymond Vogelman. And again, this is it's just kind of a repeat, but I was really hopeful last year that we would have laws initiated that let us know what happened. And I noticed that my son, who was murdered on the 5th of October in 2022, that you have the POBR still is August 15th of next year. And it goes back to these young men shouldn't have died. They shouldn't have been in the general population. My son was attacked multiple times before he was finally killed. And he didn't belong in the general population, but they're not trained to handle mental health. And I would hope the CLERB could look into why the state laws that were passed can't be initiated. I know you have no power over the sheriff, obviously, but I hate to see other young men go the same route. Nothing's changing. I thank you for your time, and I know you don't have any control over everything, but maybe going to other agencies to see what happened would be good. Again, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Next, we have Karen Remus.
Good evening, CLERB members. My name is Karen Remus and my pronouns are she, her. I'm a San Diego County resident and an attorney licensed to practice law in this state for over 30 years. On October 24th, the San Diego Union Tribune published a story detailing how the county medical examiner ruled the recent in-custody death of Navy veteran Keith Galen Bach a homicide. Mr. Bach was diabetic and was detained at the Central Jail. The UT story covers in painful detail how Mr. Bach asked jail deputies for help after the warning alarm on his insulin pump started sounding, and that fellow inmates also tried to get the deputies' attention, all to no avail. He died from diabetic ketoacidosis, and the medical examiner ruled the death a homicide due to inadequate medical care. Mr. Bach had been married for over 35 years and worked as a technician for the city of San Diego for over 2 decades. At a press conference in front of the downtown jail, his widow said, quote, "They took away the love of my life," end quote. I know you all volunteer to serve on CLERB because you care. CLERB members, I request that you seek help from a public entity that has the power to bring the change that is so desperately needed. I ask you to request intervention now from the State Attorney General. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening.
Next, we have Estela Nunez.
Hello, my name's Estella, and I actually work for a company called Second Chance Program here in San Diego. And they work with a lot of justice-involved citizens, and it's actually the reason that me and my classmates from SDSU are here to kind of observe and to report back to school what does a board meeting look like. And as I was sitting here and listening to everyone's testimony, I was really surprised of I feel like the lack of empathy that society just has in general for those in justice involvement. I personally have never had anybody pass away in jail or had that impact on me. So guess what? It's one of those like out of sight, out of mind, or worse, the mentality is like, well, that's what they shouldn't have been in jail. And so to me, as I was sitting here listening to all of this, I couldn't help but wonder what educational programs or what kind of PSAs could we have for society or just for the public to try to expand on some of that empathy, that these are our brothers and sisters and these are people that are suffering and they shouldn't be, because everybody makes mistakes, but like someone else said so well, that shouldn't be a death sentence. And so I just wanted to speak that thought. And me and my classmates are looking forward to hearing the rest. And that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Next, we have Dee McLeod.
Hello, my name is Deirdre McLeod, and I am a constituent of Board Supervisor Joel Anderson, District 2. My pronouns are she, her. As part of her presentation last month, Sheriff Martinez included a slide listing 7 organizations with oversight over the San Diego Sheriff's Office. What that slide did not show was that the SDSO has resisted being held to account by all of those organizations over the last few years, including and especially this board. I have been attending CLERB meetings for 2 years, and I know how much you have accomplished despite law enforcement pushback. Yes, much still needs to be done, and I continue to urge this board to move forward with all the San Diegans for Justice recommendations, including expanding your jurisdiction to include medical staff oversight and auditing powers, demanding the release of full CLERB reports in accordance with the law, and pushing for even more thorough body scans of everyone entering our jails. With both the Sheriff's Office and now the Probation Department seeking new ways to duck your recommendations, I imagine the last few months have been extremely frustrating for those of you serving on CLERB. Your ability to hold the Sheriff's Office and the Probation Department responsible for the dignity and the safety of the people in their care does seem much harder now. But the way forward is to continue your support of impacted families, partner with community groups, and strengthen the community's resolve around your mission. Lives depend on your determination to not give up the fight. Thank you.
That concludes our public comment.
We will move to approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from last month? GI. Okay, is there a second, please? Anybody want to second GI's motion? Thank you, Nadia. Bonnie, can you call the roll, please?
Chair Mary Ann Pintor,
Yes.
Vice Chair Nadia Qunayub, Secretary Bonnie King, yes. Adele Fasano,
Yes.
Ariana Federico Mondragon,
Yes.
Tim Ware,
Abstain, absent.
G.I. Wilson,
Yes.
motion passed.
Thank you. We will now move to our presentation training tonight from the sheriff's office. It's the presentation from the Detentions Investigations Unit. And this is a follow-up to the presentation we received regarding the random scanning at the detention facilities a couple months ago.
Hello, everyone. I have Lieutenant Mullane here from the Detentions Investigations Unit. I know he's happy to be here. He was actually the CLERB liaison sergeant here for about 3 or 4 years, so he's happy to come back.
Sorry, I didn't catch his name. Lieutenant Lane?
Mullane,
Mullane.
M-E-L-E-E-N.
Thank you.
Let's see if this works. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you guys for having me tonight. I appreciate it. Again, my name's Aaron Mullane. I'm a lieutenant for the Sheriff's Department, and I oversee our Detention Investigations Unit. I also oversee our Contraband and Narcotics Interdiction Team, and that's what we'll be talking about this evening. So our Contraband, Narcotics, and Interdiction Team, we operate out of our 3 booking facilities. I have a group of deputies that work at Las Colinas. They're overseen by one of our detention sergeants, Sergeant Gardner. At San Diego Central Jail, we have Sergeant Applebaum. She oversees the CNIT program there. And then we also have a CNIT program out of our Vista detention facility with Sergeant Lovelace. Can you hit the space bar? Oh, here's we're having technical difficulties. No. There we go. All right, so just a little bit about our CNIT process. So this process begins when our arrestee comes into our facility. We have a couple of deputies that will do a little bit of research on that incarcerated person to find out prior arrest, criminal history, prior incidents that they've had at the jails. We're looking for any prior instances where they've smuggled narcotics, just kind of trying to get a real quick overview of who that person is. Once they're done with the research into that, they'll then go over to our pat down process. And this is where one of our deputies conducts a thorough pat down of the incarcerated person. And we're looking for any type of drugs, any type of contraband, anything that they shouldn't have, any type of weapons, anything that shouldn't come into our facility that potentially the arresting officer may have missed during their search. Once they're done with the pat down process, they head over to our body scanner, which is going to be the picture on the far right. Our deputy enters their personal information into the computer system, and then they will go through the body scan. The image on the left that you're looking at, this is a body scan that was completed. And if you look at the orange arrows, that's indicating items that were seen during that specific body scan. In the event that our deputies do see an anomaly on the body scan, a couple different things can take place. If an anomaly is seen, the arrestee will be rejected or can be rejected. And by that, I mean, we will tell the arresting officer that they're going to have to take that arrestee to the hospital to get a hospital clearance. Because our concern there is their safety at that point. In the event that they do have any type of narcotics or something that's inside of them, our concern now shifts to their welfare. In the event that they do have narcotics and they were to, say the packaging were to explode, or burst, and they were to have a medical emergency where now they're overdosing, we want them to be in the best possible spot to be treated for that, which is why we will reject them and send them to the hospital to have a doctor conduct additional testing and ultimately clear them of, and tell us that there are no more foreign objects inside of them. We also do have X-ray capabilities. Our deputies can convey to our nursing staff that we have a concern that there may be something inside of them, and the nursing staff can order an X-ray, and that'll be your images on the right. The image in the middle shows a key that was found during an X-ray, and then the image on the right where the 2 orange arrows are at shows an anomaly on the X-ray screen that ultimately ended up being drugs that were trying to be smuggled into our facility as well. So with regards to the screening process, the numbers that you're looking at here, this is the total number of screenings that happen at our facility. So it's not a total number of persons that came in, it's a total number of screenings that were done. So if you had one person get arrested, say 3 times throughout the year, it would show up as 3 separate entries on this slide that you're looking at. Year to date so far, Central Jail has seen 3,485 screenings. That's by far our busiest booking facility. Las Colinas is looking at just shy of 1,300 screenings, and then Vista about 849, for a total of 5,632 screenings that have been done year to date. In 2023, that number is the 5,163. That's showing the entire year how many we did, whereas the middle column is just year to date. Oops, sorry, you still looking at that? I can go back. Yes, ma'am. No, absolutely. Correct. So that's the total number of screenings that took place. So if right. So say we have an incarcerated person that comes in, or an arrestee that comes in, and they go through the screening process. Our deputy finds an anomaly during the body scan, and we reject that person and tell the arresting officer they need to take them to the hospital for a clearance. And then they come back and they're scanned a second time. That one person would show up as 2 scans. Or if they were arrested, say 3 times throughout the year, they would show up as 3 separate scans. So it's just the total number of scans, not the total number of persons. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So the first bullet point there, that was all of 2023. The second bullet point is this year to date so far, as of the end of October. You're welcome. So on this screen, what you're looking at is the total number of times that contraband was seized. You're also looking at how many were rejected. And again, the rejection is that we've seen something that they need to go to the hospital and have a clearance done at the hospital. And then the second bullet point down is you're looking at how many were sent to our secondary process. So our secondary process is a little bit more in depth. That can include the X-ray. That can also include a supervised bowel movement where the deputy observes the person have a bowel movement, and the deputy checks the bowel to ensure there's no contraband or narcotics inside of there. And then year to date, as of the end of October, we're looking at a total of 640 times where contraband was seized. Compared to all of 2023, we're at 825. And then if you look down toward the bottom where it talks about contraband identified, so this is the number of times that contraband was identified either during the pat down portion where we have found it 400 times. That's the initial portion of the process where they come into our facility. 99 times so far to date, we have found contraband during the screening process. And then 83 times we found it during the strip search portion. And then 27 times where an X-ray was taken. And then looking at 2023, approximately 16% of all screenings that took place, we were able to identify or seize contraband. And then in 2024 year to date, we're about 11% of the time. You guys good if I advance this one? Oh, I'm sorry. On the right, that's a body scan. And then that was narcotics that were found during or after that specific body scan. So on this next slide, again, we're looking at overall screenings. So drugs in 2024 year to date, we have found drugs 439 times. We have found drugs and a weapon 8, weapons 19 times, And then other could be money, cigarettes, lighters, just additional contraband that they're not supposed to have. So that's what your first screen is going to show. And then overall, from January to October this year, we've seen a decrease of 5% of contraband that has been seized when we compare those numbers to 2023. On the right, the photos that you're looking at is narcotics that have been seized. And then the photo on the bottom right in the blue and the purple, that's balloons that the narcotics were placed into that the person had either swallowed or found a way to insert it inside of them. And that's what would show up on the screening as an anomaly. And that's what our deputies are looking for when they're doing either a supervised bowel movement or the person's going to the hospital and the narcotics are being passed to the hospital. On our next slide, just a couple highlights of some of the items that our CNIT team has found. And this first one, our CNIT deputies identified an anomaly during an X-ray. And this ended up being 54.15 grams of fentanyl, as well as 15.05 grams of methamphetamine that they were able to capture and keep from moving on into our facility, into our housing units. The next slide, this is one of our deputies conducted a body scan, and on the body scan, they discovered an anomaly in the lower pelvic region, and the deputies were able to seize 4 bindles containing 102.14 grams of methamphetamine, as well as 10.05 grams of fentanyl. And again, this is with the screening process that we've implemented over the last almost 2 years now. This is what we're finding, and this is what we're keeping from going into our housing units. Our next slide, this was an anomaly that was identified during an X-ray, and the subject was found to be in possession of 2 packages, and in total, it was 72.18 grams of fentanyl that they were able to seize. So I bring these to your attention because I want you to see what our deputies are finding during that screening process and what we're keeping out of the facilities. And our last slide. So these are our overdoses, 2023 compared to 2024. 2024 is going to be highlighted in orange, and then 2023 is going to be the blue. This is year to date as of the end of October. So I attribute the numbers coming down to several different things. One, I believe it's the more detailed process that we've implemented with the screening of our persons that are coming into our custody, as well as the enhanced medical screening that's taking place, the facility searches that are being done, utilizing our Detention Services Bureau canines that are coming in and doing sniffs for drugs. And it's just an overall collaboration between us, our deputies, our sworn staff, our medical staff, our counselors, our psychiatric staff, and the incarcerated person outreach that we're doing. So when we're asked if we believe that this process is working, I believe it is. We're seeing the number of overdoses that are coming down. So, and with that, I'll take any questions you guys have. Yes, Mr. Ware.
You mentioned a more detailed screening process. Can you elaborate on that? Like, what are we doing different than we didn't do?
That's a great question. So in 2023, I believe it was in February, or maybe it was January, we reevaluated our screening process and our booking process and to see if there's anything that we could do differently to be able to combat the amount of drugs that are coming in. We implemented the body scan process. The incarcerated persons were already being patted down, but we now have deputies that are doing the pat downs versus the arresting officer that's doing the pat down. We also implemented the body scans, a research of their history coming into jail, looking at their criminal history, what priors they have, and then getting our deputies trained up on that body scan and what to look for. Also implementing the secondary process where we're observing the arrestees more. We're also doing our secondary process where the pelvic x-rays can be done. And then if we reasonably believe that that person has narcotics in them, we're getting them out to the emergency room so they can be treated. And we're also doing supervised bowel movements where we're sitting with them until they have a bowel movement, and then we're having a deputy go through the bowel to check and see if there's narcotics that are coming in.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for reminding me, Brett. We had the Narcan already in the facilities in 2023, is that correct? Or did that
Do you know when the
enter
Narcan
later?
got put in? I don't know specifically when it was.
Yeah, it was probably several years before that.
Yeah, I just wondered because it's such a dramatic decrease. And someone earlier, one of our public commenters mentioned that the reason the numbers are decreasing is because we're not reporting the Narcan deployments. Do you think that's why it's decreased? Why, or what, are the Narcan deployments being included in these numbers?
So I don't know specifically about how each Narcan deployment is tabulated. I believe the number of overdoses are down because there's not the amount of drugs that are going into our facility.
Because of the new scanning procedures?
I believe so. They know the processes that we're taking to scan the persons that are coming into our custody. And with the amount of drugs, what I've shown you tonight is just a very, very, very small portion of the amount of narcotics and weapons that our guys are seizing during the CNET process. So with the smaller amounts of drugs getting into our custody, that's going to result in lower number of overdoses.
And just follow-up question, then if anyone else has questions, please let me know. So looking at the packages that you're intercepting, these could be extremely deadly if they burst, if they're not detected. So who is bringing and are you able to generally say who you are seeing bringing these drugs to that degree into our jails? Is it anyone in particular?
No, it raised the range from, race to age to male to female. It's all over. I couldn't tell you it was a specific age range or a specific race or a specific charge that's coming in. It runs the gamut of a little bit of everything. We have the guys that are, they have a warrant out for their arrest and that could be on probation or are on probation, and they know that they're going to have a dirty drug test when they test, and they know that their probation officer is going to take them into our custody. With the amount of drugs or the high markup for sales of drugs in the facilities, there's a high price tag on that. So we have seen it where they knowingly, and they'll tell us when we talk to them, yeah, I knew I was going to be arrested by my probation officer because I knew I was going to, have a dirty P test, and I brought it in. Sometimes they'll tell us they brought it in to sustain them during their incarceration because they know they're going to be in for 10 days. And it's a personal amount. We've had them tell us that they brought it in because they're going to sell it. There's no specific, I can't identify a specific demographic that does it. It's all over.
I guess I wasn't looking for a demographic. I was looking for whether these are people that have been arrested multiple times before. This is not necessarily their first time in incarceration.
It's both. We've seen guys that it's their first arrest. We've seen guys that, it could be their 50th arrest. It ranges the gamut from a little bit of everything.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I can't give you a more specific. It's not that easy.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes. So we do have the ability to look into their history and see if they are gang members. Again, they're not exempt from this as well. We've seen gang members that will bring drugs in as well.
And I didn't turn my microphone on, but please use your microphone.
Thank you, Chair. I had two questions for the research history for the arrestee. Does that also include, or does any information pop up for their mental health, any like drug addiction that they're struggling with?
So our guys have the ability to look at, so if they were previously incarcerated and they have those flags that are listed in our jail information management system, our guys do have the ability to see that. If it's their first arrest and they've never been arrested before, then we wouldn't have the history on them.
And so would then arrestee would have to disclose that in the screening?
So our part of the screening process, our deputies will talk to them, and there are times where just in talking to the person, they'll tell us that they do have drugs on them.
Oh, and then I was wondering for the folks that are bringing in drugs for whatever reason,
is there a way that they're separated from other folks that are arrested
What do you mean? If we
Like-
believe that they have drugs on them at the time?
when they're
Or-
brought back from the hospital?
Yes, so when they're brought back from the hospital and they go through the screening process again, if the doctor has said that there's no, if they've been cleared or they produce narcotics at the hospital, and then they're scanned at the hospital and the doctor says, okay, they're clear now, and then they come back into our custody, we'll still run them through the body scanner and the secondary process to ensure that there are no more drugs that they're trying to bring in. And anyone that we reasonably believe does have drugs on the person or that we suspect may have it on them, we will keep them separated from the rest of our population until we can clear them from our CNET process.
Okay, so eventually they do join other,
Yes, once we believe that there are no more narcotics or contraband that's on them, then they will rejoin the rest of our population.
do any other, I mean, I'm pretty sure you're an expert, but do other jails like maybe separate them from other folks, like groups that are not bringing in, individuals that are not bringing in?
For the entire time of their
Yeah, for
incarceration?
the entire time?
I've not
you-
heard of a facility or, so we don't do that. And in talking to other agencies, other departments that house incarcerated persons, I've not heard of that specific where they keep them separated during their entire incarceration. And I would tell you that in talking to other agencies, we have agencies come to visit us because we do believe we are on the forefront of the CNET process. We have other agencies that come down and look and model what they're doing after us. And in turn, we also research other agencies to see if there's anything we can do different or if there's anything we can do better, if there's new technology out there. We're constantly looking at ways to improve our processes.
Okay. I'm just wondering because we hear a lot from, families and just the vulnerability that people are when they are, becoming incarcerated.
Mhm.
So, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board questions, Mr. Ware?
Yes, thank you. Very impressive report
Thank you.
and pretty extensive process. So you as a professional, when drugs do get through, as a professional, a veteran law enforcement official, what are your first thoughts on how they got through? Because I can tell you our audience, I can't read their minds. Our audience members are thinking, okay, that's great, but you didn't stop it to help my loved one.
That's a good question. My first thought is, first of all, is the incarcerated person okay? Did we make sure that their welfare was checked on? Did we get them transported to the hospital? And how are they doing, first and foremost? When I look into and I go back to my sergeants and we go back to our teams, my next question is, how did it happen? How did it get through? And is there anything we can do better for the future? Is there anything that we did wrong? Is there anything that that we need to modify or change? Is there a different technology out there that we haven't even considered that would have stopped it from getting in? So those are my first questions. Their welfare ultimately, and then how did it get in?
Last question. You mentioned weapons. Are we talking mainly edge weapons that are getting through or trying to be brought in?
Yes, a lot of times it's box cutters, pocket knives, razor blades, typically your edged weapons. I'm sorry? Sometimes, no, usually they could have been ingested at one point. They could have been inserted inside. It could be something that could be, hiding in their underwear. Could be something that's hiding in a belt line, which is why they go through the entire process with the pat down first, and then anything that may have been missed during the pat down, that's where they go to the body scan next. And anything that, I can go back to the key slide, that's anything that's metal shows up.
I have a
Mr.
question.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Adele.
My question is, has any consideration been given to doing body scans of visitors to the jail? I know you're doing the canine screening.
I don't know. That would be outside of my realm. Where I specifically concentrate on the arrestees that are coming in and that aspect of it. So I don't know exactly what's been discussed. So that's outside my realm.
Mr. Wilson.
Cell phones, have you confiscating cell phones?
Yes, we do see cell phones that come in every now and again.
And then just to Adele's question, I don't remember whether or not Sheriff Martinez addressed the scanning of visitors coming in. But I would like to, if Mr. Lewin could get us an answer to that for a future meeting, I'd appreciate it. I'm sorry, Mr. Perkins. I was looking at you, and then I see Mr. Perkins back there, so get that for a future meeting. Thank you. Any other board question? Yes, Nadia.
When you find the drugs or paraphernalia on them, is there an additional charge, and does that vary depending on what they're bringing in?
Great question. So yes, there's it'll be a felony for bringing drugs into our facility. So we, the deputies, our senior deputies will write the crime report on that, and that will go to the DA's office for considerance of issuing charges on that. And then if it's found during the intake, the screening process, the pat down or the body scan, that's given back to the arresting officer for them to include in their crime report. So, but if it gets into our facility, then our deputies will write the crime report.
Mr. Wilson.
It appears that the scanning process and the procedures that you've implemented very, very successful. And it looks like it's working. And I know that you're just doing, for clarification, you're just doing the jail population, right? You're just doing the inmates that are coming, and you're not doing anybody else.
Correct, sir.
If there's no other board questions, we can move to public comment. Oh, I'm sorry, Ariana, go ahead.
How, what then happens to the drugs that are found or the things that are found? How are those disposed?
So if it's found during the initial screening process, during the pat down or the body scan, that's given back to the arresting officer to impound and take as evidence. If it's found once they're inside the facility, so during your strip search or after the x-ray, or when they go out to the hospital, if it's a hospital run that a deputy does, then that we'll take that in as evidence.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. And we will move to public comment. Yusuf Miller.
Good evening, Yusef Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition, Saving Lives in Custody, California. And I am so happy to hear and see that so many illicit drugs are captured on entry into the facility. And I would say the more the merrier. The more they catch, the more they stop, the merrier. But of course, we see gaps. I know the gentleman was here before me. He's only speaking about inmates going in, but I want to keep our focus and our eye also on those who are not being processed, for the staff and deputies as well, and the employment of these drug sniffing dogs. Now, I know we heard before that the cost of hiring more dogs is expensive and getting them trained and all these kind of things. But for what goes on through MCJ, Men's Central Jail, we should host one continuously at Men's Central Jail, and then have the randomness on the other 7 or other 6 jails. I think that would make much more sense to me. And as we stand and post at MCJ, Men's Central Jail, we see that there are big gaps in who comes in and who comes out. Staff goes in and out of doors that don't get scanned for even weapons. Staff goes in and out of doors that definitely don't have guard dogs. We see people coming with Grubhub and all these kind of things, and where people go in through these doors, in and out, bags and all kinds of stuff, and no one is being checked and scanned. So that's a big gap in our screening process. So although I want to say thank you and pat the people on the back for finding those on the inmates, but I think we do not need to limit ourselves to that population. And I would like to see a comprehensive plan, not only for now, but in the future,
on how we're going to get to scanning all the staff and all the deputies all the time until we get a handle on this, because going around in a random way is not feasible. It's not workable. So when a person dies from overdosing any of these drugs, they don't come back. So this random issue like this could leave so much up to overdose that it's inexcusable. So I wanted us to take a more proactive and aggressive form of that. And if we're not capable now, then when will we be capable? And we need to make that capability as sooner than later. And again, I would also like to say that the fentanyl deploys need to be in that overall data that we see. And when we research and keep our eye on the data, that's one of the things that dropped markedly is the deploys. Now, if it comes back and says that it's we don't have fentanyl deploys because we're not having people overdose, hooray, we're all for it. But we need to see and know that that's the case, that there is no data being excluded, which gives us a false security on the drugs entering the jail.
Yusuf, can I just ask, did you mean the Narcan deploys?
Narcan deploys, I meant to say, what did I say, fentanyl?
Yes, I was very
I meant to say
confused, so-
Narcan deploys against fentanyl. So
How
thank
did I
you.
miss that we were doing deployments on fentanyl? Thank
We
you.
better not.
Okay, thank
We
you.
better not. I'll be right back up here.
Next, we have Oscar.
Is that online?
Yes,
Thank you.
online. Sorry. Oscar, can you hear us? I think you're muted.
Why don't you go ahead and move on, and then if we can catch him later, we will do that.
Next, we have Paloma Serna.
I'm Paloma Serna, the mother of Elisa Serna, who died November 11th, 2019. I'm with the North County Equity and Justice Coalition and Saving Life in Custody, California. And so also too, it was a very, a lot of information regarding the presentation, and I'm glad to see, like, what Yusuf stated, that there is a decrease in overdoses. But too, I'm also assuming that the deputies are actually on high alert and they're doing their job. I would like your attention to go back to Omar Moreno Aurora, Tammy Wilson's husband. He was he died in 2021, and he went and got he was arrested at his home with a fake charge of being drunk in public, in which he was actually home. But also too, he went through that booking process of being scanned. And here on the San Diego UT, it was stated that during the scan that the deputy was not even paying attention to the scan, and there was in the slide, I guess, an object or something that was in Omar's stomach, and it was being ignored. The deputy was not paying attention. He was fumbling with paperwork. I guess right here it states that he was just looking at paperwork, not even paying attention to that, in which it led to the death of Omar. And still too, I know the presenter was stating that, people's lives matter, and it really does, they matter to us, but to Omar was not, it took an hour for somebody to go back and see him already, that he has passed. And this also too with Saxon Rodriguez, they were late in checking on him, and many more people, they need to pay attention to their job. If they're scanning, if they're doing cell check, people lives do matter. I'm so sorry that our the black sheep of society is our loved ones, and they're an inconvenience to people, but we love them very much. And and I find it very strange. I don't know how big are those package of drugs that were on the picture. They look pretty large, and I find it very interesting that men are very comfortable to violate themselves, to be inserting stuff in like that. I guess I would have to ask my husband and sons if they're very comfortable in doing that. It looks, I just find that very strange that anyone that enters would do that. Thank you.
Next, we'll try Oscar one more time.
Oscar, can you hear us? And are you unmuted? Okay, let's move on.
Next, we have Darwin Fishman.
Mr. Fishman, are you trying to speak again?
Yes, I am. Thank
Okay,
you.
okay.
Yeah, thank you for unmuting me. Darwin Fishman, Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego, he, him, his. I wasn't going to speak, but the presentation was just extraordinary. It's boilerplate for the sheriff, and I know CLERB folks and audience members can see through it, but I really just got to say, I mean, it's just really bold to actually say with a straight face that San Diego is somehow the model and other law enforcement's coming to see us. Really? You want to learn how to kill a lot of people in custody? Be number one for in custody deaths in the state? Come see what we're doing? But look, a serious note, which you really should have started with is an apology to the impacted families. The technology in which you're describing is already used by other jails, by other facilities. The truth is, San Diego had to be dragged screaming and kicking to take this technology and improve what they've done. And it's not even obviously there, still not testing deputies and staff, except for the random one. And the truth is, other facilities, detention facilities are ahead of us. They have much better ways, and they know it because not only are the deaths lower, in custody deaths lower, but also the amount of contraband and what they get and they confiscate, they're able to seize is also substantially lower. Part of it is obviously San Diego has a reputation of being an easy place. Otherwise, you wouldn't be getting what you're getting. And the other part too, which I understand you can't disclose, is that the only way that you're getting what you're getting is obviously staff and deputies have to be in on it. If you're smuggling it in, you can't just move it around and sell it unless you've got people that are on the take too and that are supporting you. You've got cameras in there. I've done tours. I've been a part of Juvenile Justice Commission and seen the facilities. So obviously that's about 20% of the story you told. You haven't shared the rest. I understand the liability issues, but again, I expect the CLERB and the community members to see through that and know that we still have a lot more work to do. I just wish the Sheriff's Department, when they come with these presentations, would just be more open, more honest, and also really acknowledge the pain and suffering you caused, how much you failed. And that's the reason why you're doing what you're doing now, and you're so late in the game with these changes. Thank you.
Next, we have Ilka Weston. Ilka.
Thank you. I was going to bring up the same thing that my brother Yusuf brought up, but I was going to be more of a poke the bear person with this one. I was going to ask directly and honestly, so what is the plan when deputies and people come? How many deputies or people that have entered in that weren't being arrested were caught with drugs? Do we know? Were they searched? Because we all know the answer to that. It's no. I do know that there are organizations that have approached Kelly Martinez, and I think we're at the time where we need to make this happen. They're called Narcan vending machines, and the people that are in jail should have access to them at all times. Kelly Martinez said no 2 years ago. Maybe we should ask her, or better yet, tell her that we require Narcan machines that are able to be reached by people that are in the jails as inmates that are rehabilitating themselves. And that's what we have to remember. Thank you very much.
Yes, I believe they are available now, and I believe they're not even required to go to a vending machine to get them, but I'm going to let our executive officer answer that for you.
Yes, and Brett Kalana, Executive Officer, pronouns he, him, his. Just for reference, in the last 2 weeks, we have made multiple site visits to various detention facilities. And in every location that we went to, Narcan was readily available in every single location, every cell, every area of the detention facility that we went to. It was something that was very noticeable everywhere we went, just to address that.
They know ahead of time you were going to that facility because it's necessary at all. So there has to be like spot checks.
The facilities have specific boxes that are set up, little clear container boxes with Narcan inside of them, and they have a little strip on it, so they know when that thing has been opened and used, or at least that it's been opened. There's no way they could have ever done that much work, knowing that, in the very short time that we did show up. I believe that is a policy in place, and that it's throughout all of the detention facilities in San Diego County.
Is there anyone else signed up to speak, Aurora?
Yes, we have 4 left.
Okay.
Next, we have Brad Saval.
Hello, yes, can you hear me?
Yes,
We can hear you.
Thank you very much. I noticed that when the deputy gave his presentation, that they had very accurate scales down to 1/10 of a gram, if not even more accurate, when they confiscate the contraband. What I'm wondering is, how is that contraband tracked? And then at the end of the month or the end of the quarter or the end of the year, how is that contraband reconciled such that if they took in 800 grams of contraband distributed among various types of narcotics, is that reconciled, and how is that reconciled such that, when they have to dispose of it, there's 800 grams disposed of and nothing is being shorted in any way, shape, or form? How is that tracked?
Thank you. Is he done, or did he accidentally get cut off?
No, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. All
I'm
right.
sorry.
Yeah, that's all I want to know how that's tracked, because that is a potential source of narcotics. And how is the sheriff's department tracking that? And then how is that being recorded? And how is the public able to see that when they take in X number of grams of this substance and Y number of grams of that substance, that's actually being disposed of? And how is that reconciled? There's got to be a bookkeeping for this. And how is that bookkeeping done?
We don't have an answer for you tonight, but I had a similar question, so I'm going to follow up for you, and we will present an answer at a future meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Next, we have Michael Cerna.
Yes, thank you. My name is Michael Cerna. I am the father of Elisa Cerna, who died November 11th, 2019 in Las Colinas County Jail there in San Diego County. Now, I want to also join with Yusuf Miller and his take on the presentation and all that has transpired and was shown to us tonight. It was very good, very well put together. And it is enlightening to see that they're beginning to actually do the things and put forth effort to stop and to stop or at least to stem the tide of drugs going into the county jail system. My question tonight is, will we also see likewise presentations from the sheriff's department about people that are suffering mental illnesses that enter the county jail system through the screening, how many are being lost, like AC Mills or Kevin Mills, who died in San Diego jail, who was just fall through the cracks. He just fell through the cracks. Will we see presentations to show us that this is not happening anymore? That like my daughter suffered, how the nurses weren't filling out their reports, the people weren't giving her any medication. Will we see other presentations that they're stemming the tide of not just the drugs coming in, but also of the deputies and the nursing staffs, the doctors, and all the other people that work in intake, that they're doing their jobs also? Will we see other presentations that will help us to understand this and to see that they're actually putting effort into everything? You know, this is very good to see and to hear all that they're doing. But, you know, it is sad that we have to force them to do this. Like my wife said, just because they think they're less of a human being, or they're not somebody that they ought to stop and inquire of, or to even show compassion, that we have to fight to get them to train the deputies and the nurses and the doctors to have compassion, to look for drugs to come in. This should be a natural reaction to them. It is a sad state of affairs that we are in this time and day in our society, that people have to force them to do their jobs. This is why the police union gets them to make all this money. This is why Gore was able to slither away with his retirement, that we have to force them to do their job. This is a sad state of affair. Thank you for your time. And I want to know if we will see these other presentations also.
Next, we have Oscar. Oscar, can you hear us?
Are there any other speakers? Okay, we'll come back to him again. I can't tell from the screen what the challenge seems to be.
Next, we have Tammy.
Hi, my name is Tammy Wilson, and I am the wife of Omar Marino Arroyo. He died in the Men's Central Jail on January 6th of 2021. Omar was having a mental health crisis, and no ambulance arrived at my house. 3 deputies did, and immediately arrested Omar on a false charge of drinking in public. Once he got to the facility, the arresting officer tried to get him released, but the deputy that was doing the booking said it was too late and they had to go through the process. So Omar shouldn't have been arrested at all. He shouldn't have been there. He was having a mental health crisis and was left in a holding cell for 12 hours where he died alone on the floor from choking to death on his cloth face mask that was given to him earlier in the day by a deputy. It took over an hour. Omar was dead for over an hour before somebody found him because a cell check was missed. They completely missed it. It went a whole hour before the next one, and that's when he was discovered. People with mental illness should not be arrested and put in jail. That's not where they need to be. They need to be in a hospital. People that are suffering from addiction need medical care. They don't need to be in jail. As you can see, that's where our loved ones die from neglect from the jails. And that's all that I have to say. Thank you.
That concludes our public comment.
Thank you. We will move on to the executive officer's report, overview of activities. You and staff, Brett.
Yep. Good evening, everybody. Again, Brett Kalina, I'm the executive officer. My pronouns are he, him, his. So first, introduction of our brand new special investigator, Bobby Reyes Salas, is sitting here to my left. Everyone else is right out there. We're excited to have another investigator on board, and that's one of the reasons we've done a few of the tours and the ride-alongs that I'll talk about in a little bit. We will be posting, I believe it'll go out early this week, for one more position for special investigators. So we hope to be up to full staff by the beginning of the new year.
Welcome.
Last month, the NACOL National Convention was held, and so I want to take some time right off the bat to thank Bonnie Kank, Secretary Kank, and Special Investigator Wigfall and Detective Perkins from the Sheriff's Department. All of them attended NACOL. I was really impressed, one, with Bonnie and Claudia. No surprise, we're very good at asking questions and getting and digging in. It was really great to hear them get up and ask questions that were pertinent to San Diego. And so I think you all are lucky to have them, representing us at NACOL. It was a great opportunity to meet board members, executive officers, investigators from around the country. It's really telling to hear all of the different struggles the different places have and the different methods that they have to go about. And so I was able to get a really great set of mentors out of the trip, which I plan on leaning on a lot and learning from some of the real big oversight boards across the country. So it was a very, very good trip. And with that, because Bobby Ray came on board, we were able to do some tours. We did a tour at Las Colinas, George Bailey, Central, the Youth Detention Center, and then even this morning we went out to East Mesa for the last of that visit. And so those were really great tours. We're very thankful to the Sheriff's Department and the Probation Department for not only giving us full tours of the locations. We got to go everywhere within those facilities. But they were there. They answered questions the entire time. They responded to everything that we did. So we're really appreciative of both departments for getting that done also very quickly. So again, thanks to them. And then I also got to participate. I was invited by the Sheriff's Office to participate in a mock in custody death presentation that was done at the behest of the new BSCC, which is the Correctional Review Oversight Board. Statewide came down for in custody deaths. The Sheriff's Department at Las Colinas put on a mock in custody death. So we were able to walk through the entire process of how the officers respond and all the individuals that are called to the scene and all their roles, what they do, and then get to hear reports from the individual in charge, get a timeline, and then hear from the homicide detectives as well. So it was a really good opportunity for me to learn. And last minute, I was invited by the sheriff's office to attend that, and that was great because I was able to make some connections with the new individuals there. What we're working on as far as staff-wise, we're really working hard on investigations. As you'll hear, we're going to try to get again, most of our investigations that are January timelines, get them done in December so that we're still on board for a recess in January. I think we're getting really close to being able to announce that. So I'm excited for all the work that they're doing and getting that done. We're working on a new method of preparing confidential reports for the board and a new method to do that so that we're more succinct in how we're providing that information to you and that they're more uniform across the board. So you'll see the same type of report from all of us. So we're working on that, and you'll see a couple of those tonight. And then the community survey website is up and live. And that's an opportunity for everybody. The public can go on there. There's a survey. There's 4 to 5 questions that can be answered in with open box suggestions. And so we ask for your help in determining what the CLERB's goals and priorities should be for 2025 and beyond. That's going to be live through December 21st. It's only going to take you about 10 to 15 minutes tops, even if you put in a lot of comments. And so we really ask for your help in that. And that's all because of Naris, our chief deputy, Naris Hakak. She really worked hard on this, and it was a lot of hurdles through the county to get that up and running. And so we're excited that we're going to get really good community input on that. As far as the workload report, it's attached, it's out there. We had 36 new cases, 12 closed cases from last month. And that brings us to a total of 153 open investigations. That's pretty high. And that part of that is because we got those 28 new bodily injury cases from probation that we are, you saw that list that's been put out on the website. We are working with council to review that with county council, probation council, in determining what materials we are going to be given in those cases so that we can conduct an investigation. As we sit here today, we have nothing. So we know that information that's on that sheet, and that's it. And so we have a hearing on November 19th. I'll let Ellen address that if you want to.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, Chair and members of CLERB. We will be meeting with Probation Council, our special counsel, and Superior Court judge from the juvenile court next Tuesday afternoon, and we will update you accordingly on our progress. We'll also be discussing just the petitions and orders that we will need to be able to get regular juvenile probation records. So it's an ongoing effort, and I will report back as I can. Thank you.
And Ellen, can you just clarify the time frame from which those bodily injury cases from probation extends? I don't want anyone to be under the impression that this is all something that happened in the last month.
Yes, absolutely. So based on earlier efforts by the previous EO and CLERB staff, probation was contacted a while ago and asked when they would be able to release injuries that qualify or incidents that qualify as great bodily injury under the law. And there were amendments made to several laws back in 2018 requiring that GBI, certain facts relating to GBIs be made public. So that request had been in from CLERB for quite a while, and they released the list to us that I understand is now on the website, and they go from 2021 through 2023, and apparently probation is still working on those 2024 items that would constitute incidents involving a use of force that would have injuries that are considered great bodily injury. So I will say, and it's on the list, I just want to be fair because probation did give us this information, that some of the incidents, it's not been determined whether it was actually a custodial probation officer that was involved in an incident that ended up in the officer's use of force that was considered great bodily injury, or whether it was an incident where, let's say, there were 2 juveniles involved in some type of an altercation, and the custodial probation officer had to break up the fight or separate the 2 juveniles, leading to a use of force that ended up being a great bodily injury. So these are all things that we don't know. CLERB's, of course, jurisdiction is to investigate those incidents. And we are hoping that with the judge's help next week, we will be on a road to getting the records sufficient that CLERB may do that.
Thank you, Ellen.
And then the last thing is, at the board's request, last meeting, we did produce a list of policy recommendations that the board did. I do want to note that in putting this together quickly to get it to the board as quickly as possible, some of the dates are not included in there. So we are working on making sure that all the dates are correct. So even though you may see them from certain case numbers, I wouldn't put anything into how long the response has been to get back. I will note that before I came, this was February of this year, when there was a significant amount of policy recommendations that all went at once. That was a large group, and we hope to get responses on them soon. But again, there was a large request on at that time. And so we will continue to update this, and we hope to make that a regular thing on our website.
Listed on the website now, and I know that members of the public have asked for this list at prior meetings, so I just want to be clear that this is in response to that. It's on the website. This is a list of recommendations that have come from CLERB going back to 2020, and a status of those recommendations, whether they were adopted by the Sheriff's Department, whether they were rejected, whether they're still pending. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to take a look at it on the website. Sorry to interrupt you, Brett. I just
Nope.
felt that this was important because it has come up by members of the public a couple of times.
That was it for me. So thank you.
Is there anything else regarding the MOU? It's on the agenda.
The MOU is what we discussed at the last one.
meeting.
It's
Yep.
on the board, so now everyone has a copy of it. We did not get that in time to put that on the last meeting, and so that addresses the issue that we had with us getting access to that. And what we plan in the near future with that is to have myself and investigators go over time, learn the process, and so that we can be able to allow all of the investigators at some point in time, once they have those skills,
Yep.
to be able to go.
And just to clarify for members of the public, and this did come up at the last meeting, but I want to make sure that if you weren't here and you didn't hear it, the prior memorandum of understanding that CLERB had with the Sheriff's Department was that really, there was really only one or two investigators that were allowed to go to death scenes. And this is a new MOU that will allow more of our investigators access to those. So we aren't relying on one person to always be available to show up, and it will give us a little more access, but he's working on the proper training for that as well. Done. That was a really great presentation. I want to just acknowledge that. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Not too much from board chairs for me tonight. I know we have a long meeting, so I'm going to continue on unless anyone has any questions for me. Yes, Mr. Ware.
I just had a question for the council on the MOU.
Yes.
Do we
Sorry, I
have-
should have
Do we
gone to
have a
board.
definition of extensive investigation experience?
Yes, it's in the MOU that we got it down to, well, not got it down. We talked about all the different types of investigative experience that people could have. It wasn't limited to just law enforcement. It was various investigative experiences. And so it's either 3 years or 5 years of investigative experience, which all of them have to have in order just to become a special investigator to begin with. So everyone qualified.
I agree with the lady in the audience. Great job, you guys.
Yes, Mr. Ware, and I'm sorry I didn't go to board questions after his report. Jumped right ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Wilson.
As the caseload grows, is there any potential for some of those cases timing out? Are we keeping a close look at that?
We are keeping a very close look on that. That's the number one thing that gets reviewed. We have reports that are prepared in advance, letting people know when we're getting even within 3 months to 6 months out, so that people are already aware that that case is on the list coming up and we got to get it done. And so that's just a general reminder to the investigators to maybe get back into the file if they've had a lull, or maybe they're waiting for additional information from the sheriff's department or the probation department. And so that they're going to remind them to follow up on that. So we make sure we don't miss any deadlines.
Anything else for Mr. Kleina? Okay, then let's move ahead. I don't have another report, and I think it's good for tonight that I don't have too much else to report because we have 18 cases to get to tonight. So let's go on to number 8. This is the CLERB letter of concern to the Sheriff's Department. It was in the agenda as already copied in the agenda. Are you presenting this tonight, or is Ellen?
We actually have Matt.
Oh, Matt is here. That's right. Thank you.
So I have Ellen give a little bit of background, and then Matt is the one who represented it on the CPR request, and I think that would be the best process.
If you could please introduce Matt to the full board and to the audience so they know who he is and how he's been assisting us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Pintar. Good evening again. So this issue has been agendized to discuss a drafted letter of concern to the Sheriff's Department concerning their responses and deliverables on a Public Records Act request that several Public Records Act requests that have been propounded since last year relating to data needed for an in-custody death study that was recommended based upon an earlier study done in 2022. While I serve as the general counsel for CLERB, sometimes I need additional assistance because, as you can see, we've got very full plates with everything going on. So I was fortunate to have CLERB retain Matt Slentz, and he is from Colantuno, Highsmith, and Watley, a very well-known law firm here. And he has been assisting CLERB staff and the vendors in reviewing all the previous Public Records Act requests that were propounded to the Sheriff's Department. Unfortunately, the Sheriff's Department has elected to only provide responses by treating CLERB as a member of the public instead of a sister agency. And so CLERB has been required to go through the PRA, the county's PRA portal, which has added on a lot of layers and not a lot of direct contact with being able to get records that are needed. So Matt has been working with staff, and I've asked him here tonight, and he has not met all of you in person. But he is assisting not only in the PRA issue that we'll be talking about tonight, and he'll present the background and go over some of the topics in the letter that is drafted for your all consideration and approval this evening, but he's also assisting me with probation matters as well. So he is getting to learn all the ropes of important issues for CLERB. So I will turn it over to Matt.
Thank you. And so I will go over just sort of briefly the contents of the letter and the background. I think Ellen covered a good chunk of it just now, so it won't take us too long. As everyone's probably aware, in April of 2022, Analytical Consulting completed the San Diego in-custody death study, which noted that San Diego County jails do have a high number of unexplained deaths and overdose and accidental deaths. The report identified 15 areas for further study, and CLERB immediately started working to hire a contractor to conduct a further study to identify what steps could be taken to address those high numbers. It hired a vendor named the Mountain Whisper Light. That happened in 2022. And key to this study is obtaining statistical information from the Sheriff's Department. So CLERB approached the office about how it could get that data directly to its contractor and what confidentiality protections would be needed. The Sheriff's Department instead took the position that CLERB would need to be submitting CPRA requests, that's California Public Records Act requests, which is California's version of FOIA for those who aren't familiar, and it's interpreted fairly the same. That has not been required by other county agencies that we've worked with, particularly HSA, who has worked directly with CLERB under a confidentiality provision as a county contractor, since we're all county agencies. To many of CLERB's CPR requests, including those that would have produced what we feel is the most important data, the Sheriff's Office has asserted legal exemptions under the CPRA and refused to produce documents or stated that those documents don't currently exist. This has led to significant delays in getting responses to the requests. We started to push back in August with a letter that my office wrote to the Sheriff's Department, identifying that we thought many of the exemptions that were being asserted were not correct under the law. We did get a response to that. We got a response letter back from the Sheriff's Department, and I was able to meet and confer with somebody from Sheriff's Department's legal counsel. But at the end of the day, we still aren't getting the information that the vendor needs to complete the study. So as we said, this has caused significant delay. There have been cost increases, and ultimately it's possible that the Mountain Whisper Light is not going to be able to produce a study that really achieves what we want them to achieve if they can't get the data that they need. So that is basically a summary of the letter and our ask within the letter. Happy to answer any questions anybody has about that or what's been going on in this. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll go to questions from the board, but first I just wanted to provide a little bit of context, and it is actually in the letter that after the Analytica consulting study, which described the in custody death situation in San Diego and the high numbers that we were seeing, what this board really wanted to achieve with this study, I believe it was actually Ms. Kangat who requested it, is we know the numbers, we know how many, we don't know why. We don't know exactly why this is happening at this rate in our jails. This was our attempt to be helpful, to help figure out to find solutions and answers. I think for every single member of this board, that is our top priority, is to stop or curb the deaths in our jails. So that was our intent. We are trying to be a partner and to be problem solvers and to look for ways that we can offer solutions with this professional help. So with that context in mind, I will open it up to the board for comments or questions. Mr. Ware.
Thank you. So if we move along with the report, trying to gather the information that is difficult for us to get at this point, and we do produce the report, will we make it known that this report is being produced without the cooperation of the Sheriff Department?
That is a good question, but I am uncertain that we can complete the report without this information. I don't think that we can. So I don't think there will be a report without the information that we're seeking.
And just to
But
touch
please,
base on that.
maybe I'm wrong, but go.
Yeah, there would be a report based upon the information that's already being provided. It just would not be as complete
As
as
robust
they
as-
would
okay.
like to have.
Right, and so if we do that, I vote that we make it known.
That we didn't get everything
Yes.
that we thought we needed to provide a more fulfilled or a robust report.
Correct.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Mr. Wilson.
Even though the information is not provided, we still have a contractual obligation. So we'll still have to pay for it. I just want to make that point that this study will have to be paid for without the sheriff.
And I think we've already paid for it.
A portion has been paid based upon the work that's been done. We anticipate a lot of that work to be done once the records come back. And so a lot of that report hasn't been written yet. So I don't think we've paid the full amount, but exact details, I wouldn't feel comfortable knowing right here and now. And if I can address one more thing, Marianne, because I do want to apologize to the Sheriff's Department, because it was my belief that at the time that the request went out from Matthew to the Sheriff's Department, which was a response to their denial of some of them in the CPR request, that it was noted there that I said that they did not respond. It is come to my attention that they did respond. So I just wanted to apologize to them that I misspoke on that.
Okay, I didn't know that either. Thank you. Mr. Ware and then Mr.
Just to
Wilson.
clarify, the information we're seeking, if we did get that information, it would go a long way in helping us to evaluate how we can prevent in-custody deaths.
That is the intent. That was
Okay.
always the intent of this study.
Okay.
Mr. Wilson.
Now, I understand that we have no jurisdiction over the sheriff. Say, what remedies do we have underneath the law? If we do not have any jurisdiction over the sheriff, where can we go and what can we do? And maybe we ought to explore somehow, legislatively or otherwise, figuring out how to make the sheriff accountable and responsible, other than just waiting for the voters to do something.
Well, I
years
think
later.
Matt could address some of the things that are options for the board if we do not collect the information.
Okay, I just want to say also, because it's been mentioned a couple of times, can we go to the Attorney General for something like this?
I'm going to let Matt answer both of those questions if he can.
Yeah, and in terms of going to the Attorney General for this, I don't know that this is in their bailiwick. That's the first I've had this question put to me, though, so I will look into it and see if that's something they would be interested in. As in terms of enforcement mechanisms that we have, to be clear, we do think that this report is within CLERB's jurisdiction. CLERB has jurisdiction beyond simple investigations of complaints. However, investigations of complaints are what it has jurisdiction to issue subpoenas for. So we do not think that we have a subpoena power in this instance. If we do decide to take some further action, and obviously we haven't looked into that, and we'd want to come back to you probably in a closed session if we were going to advise that. But generally speaking, the sorts of things that we would be able to do is we can always bring an action under the CPRA. The CPRA itself has remedies if we feel that there are exemptions that are being asserted and there are documents that are not being disclosed. There's also the possibility of an action to assert that, we don't need to follow the CPRA in this case because CLERB's authority and the authority it gets by way of its founding documents, it's really exercising the Board of Supervisors authority in some sense, allows it to go and get this information separate from the CPRA. Early days yet, I'm not recommending that we take any of those steps, but those would be the types of steps that we would take if we were to try and do some sort of enforcement mechanism here. Nothing else within CLERB's particular enforcement mechanisms as it applies to its rules and regulations, though.
Unless the board were to consider amendments to its rules and regs to clarify or broaden that authority, but then that, of course, would have to go to the Board of Supervisors like all of the other changes that have been proposed.
That is what I understood it to be too. So, yes, Nadia.
So I may have missed it, but are the Board of Supervisors aware of this refusal to cooperate?
Well, I believe that they probably are after this weekend because there was a front page article about our considering this letter today. And I think it was on Sunday or Monday. It was on the front page of the Union Tribune. I also I guess I could have reported in my report as well that I have been communicating with the Board of Supervisors about our priorities, about the changes that we're seeking, about the things that they can do to help. And I will certainly make sure that they are aware of this as well in my next conversations, which I've been having on a fairly regular basis when I can.
And they are CC'd on the letter. If approved by the board today to go out, they will receive a copy of this letter as well.
Any other board comments or questions? If not, we will move to public comment. Public comment is limited to 15 minutes on this item. Again, we have 18 cases to get to tonight, so I need to be efficient. And please direct your comments to the board.
Okay. You have 2 in person and 3 online.
Okay, thank you.
I will call Yusuf Miller.
I'm sorry, 2 in person and 3 online. Let's keep it to 2 minutes then.
Good evening, Yusuf Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition, Saving Lives in Custody, California. And as we can see, the reluctance for the Sheriff's Department to cooperate, it doesn't take for us to be rocket scientists to know that this relationship has been fragile and almost non-existent since the beginning. We have been saying that the CLERB needs more authority, need more teeth in the CLERB to force the sheriff's department to at least respond or take some of the advice and recommendations that come from the CLERB. But we see now when that relationship is strained, that how much authority and connection we really have. To have the board put in a public request as if it was me asking for the information, or Ms. Cerna or someone asked as if we were out on the street. What kind of relationship? We come to you for your ability to intersect with law enforcement, with the sheriff's department, and that can't even get done from your perspective, from your position. So it's really disheartening for the families, for activists to know and to be affirmed, because we already assumed it, but to be affirmed that push come to shove, the answer can be no, no, and hell no. We need to make sure that we either revise the charter or your rules and regulations to give you more power, or take those 70 or 68 recommendations from the Californians for Justice recommendations to strengthen CLERB, so that we can have a more fair balance in requests from these issues. These issues are serious. These issues are people's lives. And now we can't even get after the public, because you're spending public money. After the public has financed this institution, Mountain Whisper Light, to come in and do this work, the sheriff's department is throwing our money down the drain, is throwing our money away. So now that when we make a report, it is something, am I done already? Okay, well, you got my point. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Tom Packard.
Yeah, thank you. Tom Packard with Showing Up for Racial Justice, North County. Actually, I had my hand up on the executive officer report. I'd submitted a request to speak on that, but I'll just save that for next month on the policy recommendations. And I submitted a request to be read this time, but maybe I did it wrong. But really quickly, this is what I had submitted. I most strongly support your efforts to ensure that the sheriff provides all the data needed for the jail death study, ensuring that all protected data are handled with confidentiality. This is yet another example of the sheriff's resistance to be transparent and accountable for her organization's work. If her organization is performing legally, professionally, and ethically, she should have no fear about sharing data with the CLERB and the larger community. I'm really strongly encouraging you to go ahead and push on this. I'm glad you're working on it, and it's essential that you get the data from the sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Paloma Cerna.
So this does not surprise me not one bit that the sheriff would behave and act like this way. She's just following the footstep of William Gore. You know, she wants to get away with everything that she's supposed to be responsible for, and her employees. You know, you guys stated, you can't have a successful report study because she refused again to supply the information that you need. It's the same way how the sheriff department refused to supply the information, the evidence that we needed for a successful criminal trial. It's the same way how she refused to supply the information and evidence, even for the civil case, where they want to do depositions even on an 8-year-old. And this is ridiculous, even with their supposed, their mock, deaths, scene. Are they going to show a Saxon Rodriguez laying on the floor for 3 hours? Are they going to show an Elisa Cerna with vomit in her mouth and over her hair for over an hour? They will not do this. It's all fake. They need to be held accountable for this. You need to force her to do her sticking job, because they are fearful of what will come and take place. They will be held accountable. So please keep pushing it. I thank you very much for doing this.
Next, we have Dee McLeod.
My name is Deirdre McLeod, and I am a constituent of Board Supervisor Joel Anderson, District 2. My pronouns are she, her. After looking over the Mountain Whisper Light contract, I have to ask if the reason the sheriff's office won't cooperate is because they already know the answer that CLERB seeks, that it's not homelessness or the availability of mental health services or realignment that causes deaths in our jails. It's that the sheriff and her staff just don't care that so many people are dying. The SDSO's oft-stated wish to cooperate with CLERB is a thin veil to hide their real goal of obstructing and frustrating those who would hold the organization to account. The sheriff has defied oversight by the federal courts, the state auditor, the state legislature, and the county grand jury. But they show particular contempt to CLERB's efforts because your work is starting to make a difference. I urge you to continue your fight for access to this data, because if it didn't matter, they wouldn't be trying so hard to avoid sharing it. Thank you.
Next, we have Denise Settler. Is that correct? Settles. Denise Settles.
Okay. Yeah, I spoke previously about how I feel really out of my depth here with this kind of a forum. Not public speaking per se. You can see I can talk all day long, but but more and not even with public service. I've worked at EPA and AID, so you know I have some experience in being a public servant. I have nothing against the sheriff's department. I think that you know we need law and order in our society. However, I think there is a huge public perception issue here. I think this is something that the sheriff's department would be concerned about. Honestly, you know, as a white middle class woman, I have learned a lot through this whole process. And I did not realize that people that go to jail have not been convicted. They're innocent until proven guilty. That is a holding cell for people. And I do think that that is an opportunity in terms of public perception to gain some kind of sympathy for people that are dying unnecessarily. This should not be a death sentence to be put into jail. Okay. We all want to have confidence in our public institutions, including the sheriff's department. However, the sheriff's department keeps appearing to want to block our efforts. There's no transparency, and that gives them the appearance of being corrupt. Unless we can get the kind of data to disprove that they are corrupt, I think that's what the public is going to perceive, that they are indeed corrupt. After last week's presentation by Sheriff Kelly Martinez, it's clear that her answer to everything is more funding. I don't think that's the answer. I think that we definitely need to have more power in the CLERB, and I would encourage you, if the County Board of Supervisors cannot give you directly that, perhaps the new ethics committee that has more power might have, I think it's the same ethics committee, but it's been given more power by the county attorney's office. Maybe that's an avenue that we should explore. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Pat Warner. Pat, I think you're muted. Can you hear us, Pat?
Go ahead and move to the next person, please.
Next, we have Sabrina Weddle.
Hello, my name is Sabrina Weddle, Saxon Rodriguez's older sister, as many of you guys know. It's 11:30 where I am at, so I can't believe I had to hop on CLERB while on vacation, but as you guys know, I will never not say Saxon Rodriguez's name. I'll start by saying Brian Powell, Andrew Ranovich, Maxwell Rimple, Andre Ramser, Melissa Burns, Reggie Barreto, Carrie Pavello, Reincarnation, Caitlin Hendricks, Marlena Banza, Kelly Payne, Levy Santos, and Chantel Williams all allowed my brother to die on July 20th, 2021. And nobody will ever be held accountable. Medical staff keeps fighting to be held accountable because they know they are allowing people to die over and over again. Melissa Burns stated on a CLERB meeting, jail is the best place to receive treatment for an overdose. She's a liar. She didn't treat my brother. Kelly Martinez sat in your guys' office, your facility, and stated, oh, people want to get arrested on purpose to bring drugs in. But like I stated, CVPD gave me my brother's fentanyl after he died. So it wasn't his own supply he died on. We need more answers, more accountability. If we're talking to the San Diego Board of Supervisors, then we need to let them know, shut this budget down. If she can't provide answers, if she can't do her job, why is it that she has this budget that's so large? This money is your guys' money too. It's not just ours. Why is Kelly Martinez above the law? Audit Kelly Martinez, audit her jails, audit her staff, her budget, follow the money, or else shit will just keep going down. I'm in Puerto Rico on vacation for my 30th birthday, and the whole time I thought about my brother because I can't come home to him. And I still don't know why he died in a place that had 9 nurses to save him. 9 fucking nurses couldn't do their job to save my brother. But yet when he was at the park on the street, saved. It's sad. And I'm learning that there was an 8th death. And just because the numbers are lower, it doesn't matter. Have a good night.
And that concludes public comment.
Thank you. So we need a motion to approve this letter and move forward with it or not. So is there a motion on this item, Mr. Wilson?
I second.
Okay. I'm going to have a motion for Mr. Wilson and a second by Mr. Ware. And any other comments or questions from the board before we move forward with the vote? Okay, Bonnie, can you call the roll, please?
Chair Miriam Pintar,
Yes.
Vice Chair Nadia Keene Ayub,
Yes.
Secretary Bonnie Kank, yes. Adele Fasano,
Yes.
Ariana Federico Mondragon,
Yes.
Tim Ware,
Yes.
G.I. Wilson,
Yes.
passes.
Okay, we are at 7:30. I'm going to suggest that we go forward with item number 9 and then potentially skip items 10 or 11 this month. Can we do that? Unless we have questions for this, unless board members have questions for our liaisons.
Yes, yes, you can do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, we have 18 cases tonight. I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to review them, and we have a lot of them are going to take a lot of discussion. So let's move forward with item number 9. I'm sorry, who is presenting this item? Is that you, Brett?
So this is in response to the discussion we had at the last meeting about options for finding, for sustained findings against the department. We know that we aren't going to make sustained findings, but we were given options of doing either resolutions or letter of concerns that we can then use those options to address the concern. If it's different than a policy recommendation. So we still have the policy recommendation, but we would draft it in a way that would still alert the sheriff's department. We wouldn't expect there to necessarily be a response on that, but we would be able to address it on behalf of the board. And so those were 2 options that were brought forward at the last time. And it's really just up for the board to decide how they would like to move forward with that.
So our options are one or the other or both, correct? There's not, okay, there's both. Okay. The only question I have is, we had also mentioned last month, or at least I think I did, that, you know, how are we going to make the public and or members of the media aware of our resolutions or letters of concern? Is this going to go out as an email to the listserv that we have?
Yes, so normally if you approved a resolution, that resolution would be finalized and put on the website. You can also direct as part of the resolution that any other government agency and county agency like the BSCC, the grand jury, the general services of the County of San Diego, the Department of Health for maintenance and hygiene issues, that could be directed in either a resolution or a letter of concern, that those interested parties be notified and transmitted directly from CLERB staff.
I would like to add to this then that we make sure that interested parties are notified of our resolutions once we've adopted them at the board. With that in mind, do I have a motion to accept these recommendations?
So moved.
Sorry, Nadia, did you have a question first?
Yeah, before we move forward for the recommendations, I want to know what our choices are if they're not accepted. Because we have a list of recommendations here and quite a few of them are not accepted. So are we just writing letters to be shot back to us?
Well, you know, based upon the jurisdiction that CLERB has, the request was to find something to do in lieu of not being able to make sustained findings against the sheriff's department as a whole because it is not specifically enumerated in the CLERB foundational documents. So yes, I mean, the goal is to make the public and stakeholders aware of the concerns that CLERB has as a board, just as a resolution would do. But then in terms of a response, it will not go so far as to compel action from the sheriff's department in these matters.
Isn't entirely different from the recommendations that have not been accepted to date.
And keeping in mind that CLERB, the way CLERB's law and authority is now, is that CLERB's recommendations and even findings are advisory only and not binding on either the probation department or the sheriff's department.
And if I could just address while we're talking about the policy recommendations. So we are still working on that, and you could see the chart that was at the end. And you can see that over the last 5 years, a majority of the policy recommendations have been accepted. And just for the record, many of those policy recommendations that may have originally been rejected, this board has then resubmitted them in which they were accepted. So that persistence has resulted in some change of policy, but it's not going to be reflected in the charts that we provided.
Thank you. Yes, Nadia.
So furthering my concern, I feel like almost that there could be a better way to do this, a way that we could evaluate with the help of the supervisors to understand what we can do besides the letters. I have no problem with the letters. I have no problem with the recommendations if they're for the public to understand. But sending a letter and then having a response 4 or 5 months later that states, no, we're not going to accept these. And I'm looking through these, so I don't know how the majority of them are accepted. But I feel like this should not be our stopping point. We should be looking for better ways to be able to compel the sheriff's department to understand that these are issues that compelled us to write a letter.
If I can respond. I completely hear what you're saying. We cannot do that without the cooperation of the Board of Supervisors, without them changing our jurisdiction or giving us additional authority. So if you don't object to us using these vehicles in lieu of being able to make any sort of a sustained finding, because for the members of the public who might not understand why we're having this conversation, our jurisdiction is limited to finding a policy violation by a sworn deputy. Sometimes when we review these cases, we see things that we think could be done better, but if it is not related to a policy violation by a sworn officer, we don't have jurisdiction. So we are trying to find a way to communicate. We see something that we think you can do better. Now, if we move forward with this today, we can come back at a future meeting and make recommendations for other rules and regulations that we want to change that we would then forward to the Board of Supervisors, similar to the way we did back in February of 2024. Now, those haven't moved through the Board of Supervisors yet. We got a little bit waylaid when Mr. Parker moved on, I think. But I know Brett is looking at ways right now that we can get those on a Board of Supervisors agenda. So my point is we can do both. I believe we can do both. Get to what you're suggesting, because I understand what you're saying and I agree with you. But we can also, I think, take this action tonight and then come back and figure out what other rule and regulation change we want to recommend and take to the Board of Supervisors.
So my purpose is just to make sure that we keep coming back to this situation, that we keep looking for better ways to do this. I have no problem with the recommendations now. I just don't want it to be our stopping point, because I feel if it's like writing a letter to your neighbor and saying, please don't shine your lights at night, and they're like, I don't care. It's like, I don't want that to be in terms of what we're dealing with, because it's much more serious than that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
I agree with Madam Chair and Madam Vice Chair. I do think by writing the letter, that will help establish a paper trail that will document, that will lay the foundation of what we're trying to do. And, you know, we will have it documented and it'll always be there. So I think that's important. But, you know, just thinking it's going to go away, I agree with, you know, it really is something that we need to stay on top of.
And I don't think Nadia will let us forget that I've committed that this will come to a future agenda.
I know she won't.
Okay. With that, any other discussion, board, on this? Is there a motion?
Made the motion.
I'm sorry, I forgot.
That's all right.
You made the motion, and did Mr. Wilson second it? Who seconded it? Nobody. Okay, Mr. Wilson seconded it. Bonnie, can you call the roll?
Chair Marianne Pintar,
Yes.
Vice Chair Nadia Keen-Ayub,
Yes.
Secretary Bonnie Kenk, yes. Adele Fasano,
Yes.
Ariana Federico Mondragon,
Yes.
Tim Ware,
Yes.
G.I. Wilson,
Yes.
passes.
Okay, I'm going to skip number 10. And does any member of the board have something that they would like to ask either of our liaisons tonight? Mr. Wilson?
Is Lieutenant back?
Here,
I don't.
they're both here.
Okay.
I was just trying to move us along since we're going to have a long night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question, but I don't think the lieutenant will have the answer. But in terms of keeping track of entries and exits to the various facilities, we in the physical security business, we call them entry control points. Do they have a list of those? Normally you try to have one entry control point to a facility, no more than two. If we know there's multiple entry control points to a facility or being used to, you know, for delivery of Grubhub, or somebody forgot their medication or whatever, is there a way to review that and see if the number of entry points and exit points can be reduced? And if they are considered entry and exit control points, how are they monitored? In other words, is there surveillance or cameras? Is there somebody checking the door? Do they need a badge to get in and out? And is there any record made of when those doors are open and closed? Most big facilities are able to do that. They know who's using that door and who's coming in and out of it.
It's a great question, and I will just give you a preface that it depends. Every facilities depends on the facility. The different facilities have different levels of technology, but absolutely lots of cameras, lots of sensors, prox card readers. Doors are locked either via key or with, like you said, a card. But yeah, there's a lot. certainly can get you any of that information. But yeah, every facility is a little different based on the time frame that it was built and where it is at in the infrastructure update and all that kind of stuff.
I would just be interested if there's somebody that does that assessment, and if it's reviewed and they gone back and say, maybe we can reduce the number of entry, control, and exit points. Right. If somebody's actually doing that, that's all I really want to know.
I'm sure it's consideration for sure.
Would you like us to have him bring us an answer at a future meeting, Mr. Wilson? Would you like him to bring back an answer, more full answer to your question at a
and I have
future meeting?
I have second part of my question.
Okay.
Is contraband considered evidence? And if it's considered evidence, then wouldn't, chain of custody procedures take over?
What do you mean by contraband? Like, you mean like could be a lighter, or cigarettes, knife?
The photographs that were shown of the drugs that were.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to defer to Lieutenant Moline for the process for something that's not a drug or that's not illegal, because there's a lot of stuff that comes in that's not necessarily illegal, but you can't have it in a jail. For instance, like a handcuff key or a knife or something like that.
Is there any kind of chain of custody procedure?
I'd have to find out what the process is with those particular items.
Right. Would appreciate it if you could find that.
Thank you. And I did have the same question, and I'd be happy to put it in emails to you after the meeting or in the next couple of days. What is the chain of custody with those contraband drugs? Where do they go?
Certainly.
Who's keeping track of them? How do we know as much as that was found is held, and how is it ultimately disposed of? So
Certainly.
I'll put all of this in an email to you, and then you can
Perfect.
bring it back at a future meeting. I don't expect you to have the answer right now.
Perfect. I already wrote detailed notes when that came up.
Okay,
so.
great.
Just another, if I may, real quick.
Yes,
I know,
please,
I know
go ahead.
You're.
No, I wasn't trying to cut you off
Oh, no,
tonight. I
no,
was just
not at all.
trying to move us.
No, not at all. I
Okay.
know you guys are getting ready to go to your cases. I just want to say I appreciate all your patience. I appreciate you putting together that spreadsheet. As you know, we were given quite a few recommendations around the same time. We've been working really hard on them. Most of them I anticipate being signed up this week. I can tell you we have implemented, at least off the top of my head, 4 or 5 policies that were requested. That's been done. And then I know definitely we did a training bulletin that was requested. So yeah, I think you'll be happy with the results of those letters, and those will be coming here shortly. I anticipate pretty much all the overdue recommendation letters back to you within the next 2 to 3 weeks, definitely by the end of the year. And so I appreciate all your help with that. I'm trying to think what else. Like Brett mentioned, I was at NACOL. I'll say it once, I said it again. I've said it many times. I'm very fortunate for CLERB. I've been to these conferences before. You see a civilian oversight from around the country, and I've always thought we have a very professional organization, some very good investigators, and some great cooperation between our agencies. So it just reminds me of that when I go to these things. So
and we have fun.
we did. It was great to get to know everybody and pick your brains and pick my brain. And so I appreciate that. Just real quick, Chair, kind of answers your question, reference of visitors. I think we kind of talked about this a while back, a little bit when we talked about the screening program, but so pretty much all our facilities don't have in-person contact with visitors, like family or stuff. The exception would be Las Colinas. There are some limited exceptions there, depending on what level you are, but the rest of them for visitors. Now, that doesn't mean they can't be in contact with an attorney or clergy. So there's obviously, but as far as visitors, typically we don't scan them because they never come into
They
physical
don't come into
contact.
contact with them.
Right.
I remember this answer now, so sorry about that.
Oh, no
Yep.
problem.
Yep.
Narcan has been in the jails, available to the IPs since June 16th, 2022. So, like Brett said, all the facilities have in the common areas where, incarcerated persons are there. They have, dispensers that are available, as well as in the lobby. We do have the vending machines in the lobby. That's more for the public. Other than that, I appreciate Brett coming to the BSCC Board of State Community Corrections in custody death review director visit. Thought it was very eye-opening for all of us, myself included, and I thank you for taking part of that. I appreciate Brett setting the record straight on your statement about the response that takes a lot of credibility. So I thank you for that. I think that's all I have off the top of my head. If anyone has any other questions, I will be happy to answer them. Sir.
Lieutenant, thank you for coming to our meetings and for your professionalism.
You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you.
And thank you for taking the time at NACOL. I know it's a few days away, so
welcome.
appreciate that.
You're welcome. It's beautiful. Thank you. Oh, and it was nice meeting Bobby Ray. And thank you, gentlemen, for the tours. I love seeing y'all out there, and we love to have more of you investigators, board members out of the facilities, ride-alongs. I know we're working together to put together a training venue, going over various things. So I think knowledge is power, and I look forward to all that. So
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Any board questions for Mr. Lewin, probation? And if you have something for us, please share. Otherwise, we're going to continue moving along here.
Yeah, just a real quick thanks and appreciation of the CLERB staff that came out to the facilities last week and today. Hopefully you saw what we're doing and have a little better understanding of how we work with the populations that we have. And hopefully next time we do this, more folks can come.
Thank you for setting it up. And I highly encourage anyone who has not yet been to all the facilities to go. Super valuable. I've been to all of them. I probably need to go back because it's been a couple of years, but really helped me when we're reading these cases understand operations a lot better since I've been at all the facilities. So thank you for accommodating us.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, we will close up our open session and
Get one alibi, so we get it on the record. I just want to let you know that Chief Tamika Nelson is going to be here on the February meeting. She's agreed to come and give a presentation.
That is great news. Thank you for sharing. Ellen, can you read us into closed session?
Yes. Good evening, CLERB board members. For our closed session agenda tonight, as has been noted, we have 18 matters to be heard in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957. And that concludes my read-in.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. We're going to take just a few minutes to comfort break, and then we'll get going.